So what does ANZAC Day mean to you?
ANZAC Day to me is a very, very important part of our lives. We should all remember them. They gave up their lives for us. Some of those kids were no more than 17 and 18, lying about their ages and getting formed into the army. And I know because my dad was a soldier and I didn't see him for 6 years.
ANZAC Day to me is a day to remember all those soldiers, everyone in the armed forces that have fought to make our country free and a better place for all of us.
To me, I see my father's face, a proud man, one of the first to enlist. His number was 1226. He was in the 7th Light Horse. I see the anxiety in his face. He never spoke of the war. What he and others went through, only those in the front line knew. My father always thought of Simpson and the donkey. That was all he would talk about, plus our wonderful Salvation Army people who, he said, were always in the front line without a weapon.
ANZAC Day for me is about reflecting on loss. It's about reflecting on the reality of war. It's about being thankful for the elders that fought for our country, and it's about reflecting about the bravery and just having the utmost respect.
ANZAC Day means to me a day when so many people gave their lives so I am able to live in a free world.
ANZAC Day means a lot more to me the older I've got. When I was young, it meant the day off. Now I've gotten older, it means a lot more. I'm usually in Cairns every year for this, and we go to the Esplanade in the dawn service. So we won't be doing that this year, unfortunately.
When the war started, I was at school. I was the youngest of 4 boys and 2 girls in my family. They all had to go to work at 14 out of economic necessity. I was going to be allowed to go to 16. I got to 15 and the war started. And I joined the Air Force Cadets and was with them for a fair while, but finally I got called up early, but I got called up into the army and did normal military training and learned how to use things. And out of the blue, the next thing I know, I'm back in London, but I'm back at the Royal Army Medical College because I worked for a firm that made X-ray and electromedical equipment. I suppose they thought I knew something about X-ray. I was sent to the military college to learn radiography, which I did serve, and I served on a hospital ship as a radiographer for a while, and it kept me busy. Used to go out to India, whatever.
It just makes me think a lot about the freedom we have and how glad I am that I live in Australia, and I hope I never have to go through what a lot of other people have gone through to keep us free today.
Everything. Well, I was in it one day. Been in the Air Force 4 years. And this is me. And this one is my brother Richard. And he was a smasher. He was really lovely. He could dance and all. Richard was in the army one.
ANZAC to me means the sacrifice that the elders in our community paid for our freedom. It's a wonderful legacy of what they actually did and fought for us so that we can have the freedom that we have today. And I hope and pray that we never have to live through anything that they endured.
We used to march down Crown Street.
Yep.
Big history. A lot of people lose their life. A lot of people in here Europe and Germany, thousands.
A life of freedom, of being able to choose our lifestyles, and a country that we can live in without a lot of restrictions.
Oh, honourable soldiers. They're loyal soldiers that went on, including my brothers. And I was doing my bit, being a trained nurse. I was at the hospital in North Sydney.
Respect and honour what all the armed forces people had done for us many years ago.
About all the men fighting in the war so we could have a better life. I think about my dad. He was in the Navy.
It's a very important day in Australia, you know. It covers all our defence forces and everything. Yeah, very good.
ANZAC Day, I always remember my father. He served in World War II. And I traditionally get his war medals out. And last year, my grandson actually, we had a copy made of the medals, and he marched with them locally, which was quite good. And I had marched with them myself a couple of years ago with St John Ambulance. So, yeah, it's quite special to me. I always thinking of my father on that day.
Oh, you'll remember returned servicemen.
ANZAC Day means to me a social event with my family, as my pop was in the war. We used to get together and celebrate. We used to watch the march together, and then he would go to the pub to play two-up with his mates.
I mean, I think my father was in it, but he passed away quite a while ago now. So, I mean, what the awful thing is.
We're too young.
I mean, I wasn't born then.
Yeah, you were.
Well, I think of it and I think of what happened, and I think to myself, it's a dreadful thing to come to even think about it in this day in life, you know, because it was such a tremendous thing for everybody, family and people that are losing their husbands, and it's not easy at all to even think about. Sort of stuck there in Barry, Wales, and anyway they decided that it was so dangerous there that they'd put us on a boat with 500 other kids and send us to Australia. So we left Barry, and it was a good little town. It had everything in it, and anyway, I didn't know, I was only 6 or 7, and then my sister was 15 and 2 brothers, one was 13 and one was 7 or 8 or something. I'm not quite sure on that one. But anyway, they decided, because we were getting bombed every day, we were getting bombed, and the Germans were coming over and bombing us, you know. The Prime Minister of England, Churchill, decided that he should send us children out to Australia.
Well, ANZAC Day,
yep,
was always a very memorable day for us, because my mother's brother, a very lovely man evidently, I didn't know him, but he was in the first Royal Air Force, and they were very excited. We lived in, I wasn't born there, but they lived in Paddington, and they were having a big celebration for him coming home. But he got home, and then he died 6 weeks after with the Spanish flu. and my grandmother never went over it. And I was at it. We thought of it every ANZAC Day, and my Uncle George, who had he said something, he used to write letters, and Mother kept them all, and sometimes she'd read them to me, and he was a very witty man. One letter he said, "I'm now in Jerusalem where Christ was born. I wish I was in Sydney where I was born." And another one, he said, people used to send to his company presents and things, and some people knitted socks, and they were delighted to get them, but he said, the last pair I got, he wore them, and by the time I got home, I had blisters. So I didn't appreciate that one. But it's always been very much a sort of in our family's heart, remembering our George.
Have you or anyone you know served in the armed forces?
I've got an uncle and a cousin that were both in the Vietnam War, and going back even further than that, I had an uncle that was in World War II that served in, and his ship was actually blown up, and he floated in the sea for 24 hours before he was picked up, so he was lucky to have survived.
My father served in the English Army.
I know both my pops did, but it was something I unfortunately didn't bring up, and I wish I did.
I know that I am pleased that my father, who was in the First War, and my brother and husband, who were in the Second War, all came home safely. My husband came home badly mentally damaged, and life was hard to live. My brother, husband, and many cousins, both male and female, in both wars. I have many uncles today and grandsons in the army, another in the navy.
My grandfather served in the Scottish forces in World War I. He was fighting the Turks in France when he was wounded and ended up being in the hospital in France.
My grandfather served in World War II.
No one in the family was involved. That's probably why I didn't have a great interest.
I know my grandparents were in the war, but I don't really know any details about that time, mainly because I immigrated to Australia when I was a young child and didn't have that information brought along with me. My own father actually served in the armed forces in the Middle East before my mother and father got married, so it was in the late 40s, early 50s. He was stationed there for, I believe it was about 5 years. He did ask my mother to go over there and get married, and she declined because she didn't want to get married in a foreign country. So my father ended up coming back to the UK and then married later on, which is good because I might have been born in the Middle East had she said yes.
Well, mainly cousins, prisoners of war, Borneo, Singapore, Port Moresby. So, fair few cousins.
Yes, my father served in the armed forces. He went to England during the war. My father-in-law was in the armed forces. He was in the army. He served in Darwin. The war years, my brother and my nephew have both been in the armed forces since, and my sister-in-law.
Both my grandparents were in the armed forces. My grandmother was a nurse and my grandfather was in the Air Force. We also had great aunties and uncles that also served in World War II.
What do you recall from living through wartime?
I was born in 1942. I had never seen my father. When the war finished and he was demobbed, he was coming down the path to our front door. And my mother was at home, obviously, and I called her out and I shouted, "Mum, the rent man is coming." She got her rent money and ran down the path only to meet my father who'd come home from war.
I was 17 years old and wanted on the food front. As I was a farmer's daughter, I was my dad's right-hand man, and Land Army girls were recognised, but not so any people who lived on the land and worked through the war. My mother-in-law was knee-high to a grasshopper, and she was sewing wheat bags. She could hardly reach the top of the wheat bag. I rode my pony miles to dances, and thanked to my mum and my dad's coupons, I had 3 ball gowns. I'm sure daughters were expensive items back then.
I was very frightened by reality, comprehended the seriousness of everything. I know Mum couldn't buy curtains, certain items at the shop. We needed coupons for certain foods, like butter, sugar. That's all I sort of remember about the war.
Pat and I were reminiscing about the air raid shelters we used to have to run and do drill, and the bits of rubber that we took out of our pouches, put between our teeth, and a tennis ball cut in half over our ears in case there was blasts. I can still see the trenches in Pensa School up the side of the playground. And, you know, bells rang and you run and got the trenches. But then again, I was at school when peace was declared. I was in 3rd form. And the girl, we had a tower that was out of bounds, and one of the girls was very game, and she made it inbounds and run and swung on it, and the whole tower collapsed around. We had pleasant memories. Had an air raid scare in Sydney. We had to have the kitchen table in the hall, and we sat under that, and Mum was in the SES, and she went out and patrolled the streets, and Dad and I sat.
Do you or your family have any traditions around ANZAC Day?
No, we don't. We just joined in with other people to celebrate this day.
Like most families, I think, we start by remembering those people that have died or served in the forces. Then it may well be then followed on with a barbecue. 2 up if we all go out to a local pub to celebrate with everyone. So it's a big Australian day.
At first I participated in the marches, but later just watched it on TV as I do now.
On ANZAC Day, I usually do the service with the residents of Farmborough. After that, I go to my sister's place with the rest of the family as her birthday is on ANZAC Day. So we always have a big birthday celebration with the family for her on the day. But unfortunately this year, we won't be doing that, but we will have a big family Skype and still blow out the candles and have cake.
In reply, I have only just started going to the local cenotaph for the dawn service. It's very moving. I don't know why I didn't go all those years ago.
We sort of just are mindful and respectful of the day and just have quiet times together and reflect on what those who've gone before us have sacrificed for our benefits now and our gains now.
We used to go up to Canberra, and it's the only time we ever used to go to Canberra. We used to see the service.
As a child, we would always go to the dawn service and the dusk service. Growing up, as a young adult, I would always go to the dawn service and then end up playing 2 up in the afternoon, having a few drinks. Now as a parent, I'm starting my own traditions with my children, and we go to the dawn service and talking about ANZAC Day.
Well, half the time I generally go and watch the march, wherever it is. I've got a son that's in the Army Reserve. Yeah. But they're all too young to have been in wars, thank goodness. Yeah. Well, we were in the Girl Guides at the Brownies. You used to march with the men down Crown Street in Wollongong.
We like to get up for the dawn service. It's a bit hard at the moment, being where we are, but and we used to like going to the pub to pay 2 up. That's a bit hard at the moment too.
Oh, well, we go downtown and there'd usually be a march down Crown Street, and I used to love watching the marches. Yeah.
Beer and tour.
Current one is it's my husband's birthday the day after, and that's why we're up in Cairns, and so that and tour.
It'll be the first one that Doug's missed. He's always gone with the older girl. Sometimes to Wollongong and Austin. I can't get out of bed. I'll admit.
Do you watch the march on TV?
I lay in bed and watch them in Canberra, and I wouldn't miss it.
Join our hearts.